Hi, Willie.
Okay, so welcome back. Thank you very much. This is the second session of the day. So you are in the Lindsay Stewart. If you were supposed to be in the Rayadi, you are in the wrong place. These sessions are going to be extensively on blockchain. If you are looking for the identity stuff, that's in the other lecture theatre. Okay? So first up, we have Blockchain in Education and Employment by Appii. Please give a round of applause to Gary McKay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining this session. Hopefully it's as informative as it was this morning with the three presentations. Excellent insight from Sergi, Andy and Andrew. This afternoon, this session's all about blockchain in education. I'll provide a bit of an overview of the landscape, the ecosystem in terms of the blockchain startups that are providing solutions for problems for education and employment and staff and recruitment, and then go into a case study regarding Appii. I'm the managing director of a startup called Appii. Appii is a pre-employment screening platform. We underpin the platform using blockchain tech. So what we do for employers is we help them screen candidates who are coming for roles in terms of their identity, their backgrounds and career history. And we'll go into some depth in some of that in a little while. We started Appii in 2016. At the time, from a blockchain perspective, there were a handful of startups that were focused on providing solutions within employment and education. There was a huge explosion of startups across 2017, predominantly because of the ICO phenomenon, which, for those of you who are not aware, was a method of raising capital for startups. So there was a large injection of capital to startups. Some of them were on the screen here around 2017. These startups span multiple different solutions for education and employment. From identity management, Civic for identity management, Evernym that we heard from Andy this morning, right through to the verification of degrees, micro-accreditation across multiple parts of the globe. The key thing here is that there's a load of solutions that are providing what are spot solutions within the education and employment space. We're going to go through exactly what they're doing in a second. Sorry, it's a little bit strange, this thing here. So in terms of education, there's 6 key items that basically we're seeing as solutions for problems. The first one being digital diploma and transcript verification. As you all know, or anyone that's been to school or through university, you receive a transcript or a degree. If you go to an employer, and particularly your first employer, they will look to see whether or not that's actually true. So what we're seeing is a series of initiatives, projects and startups focusing in on how we verify degrees and diplomas. Universities are pursuing this. In the UK, we've got the Open University. In the States, the United States, there's MIT with Learning Machine. Europe, University of Nicosia is quite a well-known example of startups and universities are using blockchain to actually record and verify degrees and transcripts. Partnership platforms are really interesting, where several universities or educational institutions are coming together to understand how they can verify particular items that they have within their inventory, whether that's education, courses, or degrees. So what they're doing is coming together in a consortia-based format to verify each other's inventory. This is interesting when it comes to composite degrees. At the present moment, if I want a degree, I need to go to one educational institution, let's say University of Napier, or Napier University, and I will go through all the varying courses during that time at Napier and be awarded a degree at the end of that. With blockchain, we can have multiple universities or educational institutions verifying certain courses and then putting a steel thread through all those courses to provide a composite degree at the end of that, and verifying all that on blockchain. So once I've completed one course by one educational institution, it's verified, and as I go through the varying courses that's required for that composite degree, I'm awarded at the end. Harvard University, I spent some time there, not there, but with Harvard University professors, and they saw this as the real upcoming thing for higher education, where globally we'll be able to actually do piecemeal, take micro chunks from varying degrees and pull them together and be awarded from Ivy League institutions. It's a really interesting space, and one that they see is what's going to give them scale as they digitize their inventory. Learning marketplaces are really interesting. We've got a gentleman here, Anthony, if you want to put up your hand there. Anthony has a startup called LRNG, where he will place, or they will place, learning inventory onto a marketplace that can be bought and utilizing blockchain to underpin that transactions. Really, really interesting. Last but not least, digital rights management. We all produce, I guess, IP as part of our education, whether it's in secondary or whether in universities. We'll produce dissertations or IP that can be commercialized. What we'll find is that will be placed on blockchain, and I guess the ownership of that will continue with the individual that's created as well as with the university. So there's a series of things where the universities are placing information, inventory, courses and qualifications onto blockchain and verifying that they are, so it can be seen as being true in perpetuity. From a staffing and solutions perspective, there's a load of stuff happening. Contract exchange, when we go and find a new job, we'll generally sign an employment contract. It's going to be a wet signature. As contracts are digitized, we'll find counterparty signatures being placed and utilized through blockchain, where we'll actually both sign possibly a smart contract. What's interesting about the contract exchange is if it is a smart contract, PII to the side, we could actually have remuneration kicking in when certain things happen as part of our day-to-day roles and day-to-day jobs. So, for example, if I've got a bonus tied to particular performance, that can be within the contract, in a smart contract, and be triggered by performance metrics as I go out through the year. So there's a company called Clause who have been digitizing contracts. It's worth looking at, clause.io. Onboarding is interesting in terms of getting what Andy spoke about this morning, which is having information about an individual, and rather than actually going out and seeking that information again and again from the same person, to actually onboard and take all that information from a blockchain network. So to get the credentials and actually pull them into an employee management system, it diminishes the time and cost that's required for employers and helps with faster onboarding. Payments and salary, there's an organisation in Australia called Chronobank. They're actually paying through tokenization. They were one of the first to do an ICO and are doing immediate payment at the close of a week for an individual completing a piece of work. Where we kick in with Appii is career history verification, background screening, and identity verification. We are using blockchain for verifying people's employment, for verifying people's education, and then allowing individuals to retain ownership of that, to use it in different contexts, whether it is for employment itself, when they go into an interview and they're asked for that particular credentials, they can pass that over really quickly without going to previous historical organizations that they've been associated with, or for other contexts. For example, if a bank requires that information, they can utilize the information that's contained on-chain. So the question is, why do we use blockchain for this? Why can't there just be a traditional method of securing information about an individual and on a normal database? Normally, I would go through and talk about who I am, what I've done, a bit of a career history in terms of my experience and skills to let you guys know what I'm all about. But instead, I'm going to go through some data points about me. At the age of 23, I left for Australia. Between 1974, when I was born, and between now, I've got 8 identity points that I would use in different ways for different purposes. So me, from an identity perspective, is disparate. And certain institutions will ask for varying points regarding that. So I'm no different to you guys. It's a pain in the backside having to constantly go and find my passport, driver's license, tax file numbers, national insurance numbers, when all I want to do is pass along one credential that can be used by an organization. Add to that, this is when you go, add to that, I was born 24th of May 1974, but the first identity document I had me registered on the 12th of May. So my initial birth certificate was actually wrong, and it continued to be wrong until I was 15 years and 9 months old, when I had to get a national insurance number, and there was issues with that. So if I go through all of the varying items of identity, I've got a national insurance number being in the UK, I have a passport, I've got a driver's license. Sorry, it's taking a bit of time to go through this. In Scotland, I got a Scottish candidate number when I was at high school. They then created another one, so I've now got double identity when it comes to educational verification in Scotland, which is a pain for me again. I didn't realise this until I actually went in just recently to try and register myself for my school qualifications. In Australia, I've got a tax file number, a Medicare card number, a driver's license, a citizenship certificate, and a passport. So all up, I've got, discounting the fact that I'm a sentient being, and the CRN number is for child benefit, that disappeared when I got my national insurance number. I've got 8 different points of identity. Add to this 15 different points of education, qualification data points. So 3 certificates with multiple qualifications from school, 2 degrees, multiple certificates from different organizations, 22 employers, 11 employers before 1996, before I went to Australia. I didn't get sacked from all of them. That's not why there's many. I just had loads of paper rounds and all that kind of stuff. And 11 employers from 97 through to here. Now, not all of that is relevant for the context of finding employment, probably about 15 data points. But that's 15 data points that an employer will need to verify in particular industries, even more, in order for me to gain work. So there's a few things that is wrong with that. One, it'll take longer for me to find work because they have to be verified again and repeatedly. 2, there's a cost associated with that for the employer. And thirdly, in certain industries, that's a real issue. We don't have enough nurses or healthcare professionals. It takes 12 weeks for them to go through and perform all the verifications at the minimum at the present moment. Add on top of all of this, 60% of us lie about our backgrounds or identity and career history. So if I split the room, I'll let you decide who's the liars and who's not. But we lie. Now, the lies can be white lies. You know, on LinkedIn, you might have yourself as a VP of X in Barclays Bank, but you've actually had multiple roles, and you come here. 2, outright fraud. So Scott Thompson from Yahoo was sacked because he was fraudulent in his CV. So Marissa Mayer's predecessor was sacked. Healthcare professional a couple of years back, if not last year, performed neurosurgery, but actually had no formal qualifications to do so. So there's some real issues. Employers know that there's issues, but they can't do anything about it. Why? Because it takes too long, it costs too much to verify. So 12 weeks for a healthcare professional and more than £100, it can go up to thousands depending on role. And for financial services, it's something insane. You talk to education, to the oil and energy sector, to manufacturing, there's significant cost and friction in terms of verifying people. It affects all parties involved. It costs employers £1 billion in the UK in total. That's productivity as well as expense, and £40 billion globally. 20 billion would that be pre-employment checks. So there's a significant amount of money spent, and it's mostly wasted. If I've verified somebody once, why should I need to verify them again and again and again? But we do, and employers do, simply because there's no method of actually having something that's verified in an immutable store that can be used in perpetuity. So, how long have we got? 5 minutes, okay. So quickly, Appii, we are verifying everyone everywhere. We've harnessed blockchain technology to verify people's credentials so they can use them repeatedly without having to be verified again and again. For those that are technical, might want to know their technical background regarding our platform. We run on Ethereum. It's a private ledger or permissioned ledger. We use third-party identification software or providers to do the biometric verification of identity. So that's, as Andy spoke about this morning, passport photograph and then a selfie, and we compare the images and get the data through to see whether or not the document that's been used is fraudulent, stolen, or verified. We've got a deterministic wallet for storing private keys. We use the BIP32 protocol to actually create what is a 12-word mnemonic. The mnemonic can be used to regenerate a private key if you lose your phone. So Andy didn't go into detail this morning regarding it, but one of the key issues with blockchain at the present moment is key management. If you lose your key, you can lose access to your data. And it's from a user experience, it's a real pain in the backside. GDPR is a real issue. Personal identifiable information cannot be placed on chain. If you place it on chain, it's there in perpetuity. If it's there in perpetuity, it's in breach, but you cannot delete it. So what we've adopted is a method called cascade ciphering, where we enable the individual and an organization to double encrypt the information that's put on chain. The private key that's retained by the individual on their phone is then the only way you can unlock that. So if the individual, I guess, discards a phone or deletes their account, it redacts to all certain, for all accounts, it redacts the information that's on chain. So you can't delete it, but we can at least give an attempt to never have anyone read it at any point. We've been looking at a few things in terms of how we can see or at least use the information that's been encrypted on chain. Homomorphic encryption is something that is interesting for us. In particular, we're dealing with data sets and we want to help our users with particular choices they may want to make from the information that they've put on the platform. And undertaking transactions in terms of computation using something called secure enclaves. The IBM product's called SGX. It's well worth looking at if you are involved with blockchain. I think we'll see heavy use of that product moving forward. We're certainly having a look at that from a privacy perspective. The boring part is it's all React Native or apps. So from a user, the user doesn't know that we use blockchain apart from seeing this 12-word mnemonic on their phone, which is a little bit different from normal transactions you would find on a platform. Again, going back to UX, one of the key things with blockchain, I believe, is trying to obfuscate the fact that you're using technology to the user. So for employers that are looking to verify an individual's credentials, or for the user themselves, we try to keep things as simple as possible. So for the employer, they simply create a thing called a work pass request, and they issue that to the individual. The individual receives that on their mobile phone or on their PC, and they quickly undertake those checks. That is Donald Trump from a previous thing. It could be Boris. He might be losing his job soon. So it's really easy for the employers to issue the checks. All digitized, all on the platform. And again, there's no real indication that blockchain is being used, but the power of the blockchain and the power of verified information is there if the individual's been verified already. It makes things really quick. And for the user, we verify their identity, and they can create their profile and have all the things verified in their profile as they see fit or as requested. Again, through the mobile app or through the phone. I won't get into the business model. We believe there's going to be a paradigm shift in terms of how people pay for these services. You all pay to use Facebook today. You all pay to use Google. You all pay to use the free services that you have registered for. You just don't use money to pay for it. Your data is used on your behalf and they monetize it. We think this will change, in particular with the move away from personalization to personification of data, where you will actually find platforms that you use the credentials that you have in that platform to seed into the likes of Facebook or Yahoo or whatever platform you're using. And if they want to use your data for the purposes of commercial gain, they must ask you whether or not you want to participate in that, and then you charge for that service. So the utilization of your data, your personal data, I think will change from it being free to something where you actually will get paid for people using it. So a quick sort of forward thinking from the 10s to the 20s to the 30s. At the present moment, it's all about blockchain verified credentials. You heard about that this morning from Andy. It's all about these micro credentials that will verify as time goes on. I think that will move to credentials being verified at the outset, so it will become a moot point to have retrospective verification of degrees, identity, and employment. It will just happen as things move forward. Personification is something we'll hear more about, where we'll move towards persona-based interactions with groups of people rather than personalization, where we're at right now. Personalization means that you will be giving away your information, whether you know it or not, to the organization that is either advertising to you or who you're interacting with. And again, the monetization, I think we'll see really early. We're certainly going to pursue it at speed, where we'll help individuals monetize their personal information for their own purposes and to choose where they actually want to monetize that. I say 2030s at the top in terms of autonomous checking and participation and global autonomous checking. I think it will happen a lot quicker. Some use cases there where we've been talking to energy suppliers or alternative energy suppliers, where autonomous vehicles will come into a lot in a particular city. They'll charge, you'll phone, rather than have your own car, you'll order a car, it will appear in the morning outside, you will go down and it will know your credentials in terms of who you are, what you are, your insurance, whether or not you're 17, whether you have a driver's license and such like. I'll leave that alone. Yeah, whether you've got a driver's license, such like. So this autonomous checking will start to happen, where we'll not need to actually start to key things in. We'll be walking towards cars, we'll be walking towards buildings. There was an organization who were called Slockit, where they were using blockchain to verify people's phones, and you could actually put it as a lock and key for your house, so you just got with your phone, and it's all blockchain enabled. So we'll move towards autonomous checking. I'll stop there for questions, because I've probably run out of time. Thank you.
We do have time. We do have time for one or two questions. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask Gary?
Excellent.
Yeah, question here.
Just from a practical point of view for now, employers
Can you
change.
speak into the queue?
Employers can be quite resistant to change. Do employers have to be subscribed to this system to use it, or can you sort of join it and then just give out your approval for them to check via the system?
So for an individual, they can join and start to request verification of their credentials. For employers, they can join and then ask you to perform checks, and then we can perform the checks for you for whatever they want to do. So whether that's your identity or whether that's your educational credentials of previous employers, and then that will be verified and placed in chain, and then you can use that again for your next employer. So both ways.
Do we have another question? Very quickly. Yeah. Oh, one question here.
As in to verify their identification and where they've been posted and what their experience has been. We spent 20 years in the military, my husband and I, and it was an absolute night.
Yeah.
Everywhere we moved, you had to verify who you were again and again and again. And half the time you weren't even offered a bank account. So if you could solve that problem, you'd be a wonderful person.
So it was just about using credentials. It was Bonnie,
Yeah.
who moved with the military. We find this with employers as well. So oil and energy, where you find a lot of employee mobility, pooling credentials and pooling certificates around the world is a pain in the backside. So anything we can do to help that would be excellent. And this kind of solution, as well as Evernym and such like, are trying to achieve.